And welcome to Between the Covers. My name is Bradley Shaw, and today we're talking to new children's author K A Farrell, who has written a wonderful book which is released in February called I Am a Boy. Yes, I am. Oh, yes, I am. Sorry, KL. So Kelly, please tell us about your wonderful book that launched in February.
Yes, so my book, I'm a Boy, oh yes I am. It's a lyrical, rhyming, really fun book for our real littlies. I wrote it to sort of try and target diminishing those gender stereotypes from the real little age. So, you know, girls like pink, boys like blue. I'm trying to get rid of all that, and I'm trying to expose that to our real little ones so they know that they can just explore their identity and their development in any way they feel natural. There's been a lot of factors that have made me want to write this book, and when it came to me really powerfully. It just, I felt like it had to be written.
Yep. So you're a mother yourself. Has that influenced you as well in writing the children's book? Absolutely.
So I'm a mother to an almost 2-year-old. Mm-hmm. Another one coming in April, and I also got 2 stepchildren. Mm-hmm. It was my stepson who was the primary motivator for this book, and I'm happy to elaborate a little bit more on that if you want. He's an awesome young boy. He loves this book. He absolutely loves it.
Yep.
He's nearly 9, but when I wrote this book, he was a little bit younger, and he loves his footy. He's a real boy's boy. He loves his dad. He gets dirty. He does those gender norm things that every little boy does. But he also loved watching Barbie. He loved painting his nails. He just loved doing things with his sister and with me. He wanted to come shopping with me, and he didn't have any. There was no negative feeling towards it. It was so natural for him to want to do these things. And he came to me one day and said, there's been a few things said to him that have made him sad and embarrassed about wanting to get his nails painted or watch Barbie and that sort of thing. And it really made me sad, because I thought it was so good that he was exploring his own identity. And I don't think it defined him as a person. I think it was just important for his development to enjoy these things socially and find out what actually interested him. He still kicks the footies. He still plays with trucks and cars, but every now and then he loves to sit down and watch movies that me and his sister love to watch.
Yeah. And so, I think it's healthy. I think it's a healthy aspect for a boy to understand the dynamics of, you know, as you say, exploring fun and interests and just understanding, elements, but still respecting his own identity. And that's finding it as well, which is a challenge, as you say.
Absolutely. And I think it broadens their awareness for social interaction as well. And as they grow older, they learn to become more accepting of other people that may dress differently. After I wrote this book, before it obviously was close to being published, I read it to them to see what they thought, and he said he was emotional because he felt like, yeah, you're right, I can do what I want. I'm like, absolutely, mate. Don't listen to anyone else. And he felt empowered to just go and do what he wanted to do without worrying about what anyone else thought. And we went to a park a couple of weeks after reading that book, and we hadn't spoken about the book, but obviously resonated with him. And we saw this, would have been an early teenager boy with his family, and he had some normal pants on, but he was wearing this really glittery skirt. And both of them, I sort of looked at both of them to see what their reactions would be. And Tatum, my stepdaughter, said, I love his skirt. And my stepson, Rio, said, yeah, me too. How cool does that look? And I thought, it's really sunk in, where I think before I wrote that book, I'm not sure they would have said anything, or they would have looked at it and gone, I'm not sure if that's okay.
Yeah.
So I'm really glad that I'm targeting a really young audience, because if we can drive it into our real young ones at an early age, I think then we will develop a generation where we completely dissolve that bullying and generation stereotyping.
Well, that would be great. I grew up in a generation that didn't have that benefit, unfortunately, as well. So I understand, that there is that transition in our society over the last, 30 years, 40 years. But, and this book's, I think what you've done really well in this book is not preached it or forced it. You've just let it be an example of, like a rhyme and an understanding that kids will engage in. And I think Tessa's illustrations have added that compliment to the book. So I think you've got a really good explanation or exploration of this topic and theme. So real well done.
Absolutely, Now Tess has done a great job on the illustrations, and it keeps it very simple as well, I find, and that's what I wanted to achieve. I didn't want to go down the track of being too focused on the mental development of a child. It's about play. It's about let them be young. Do you know what I mean? I'm not a professional in child development. I'm just a mum. I'm a mum that wants my daughter to grow up and not judge someone for wanting to explore their own identity and just go, wow, I love what they're wearing, or I love what they're doing. And that's the driver of this book, and I'm really passionate about it being a movement, but just socially and calmly.
And letting kids absorb it at their own pace, as you said.
100%.
Just get understanding it of their own, ask questions as they have them, and create the conversation that parents can have if the child needs it, which is good. So that's a good starting point you've built. So.
Absolutely. It's good that you mentioned the parents, because it's a message to the parents as well that it's okay if their little ones are exploring this kind of play. It's great for them. It's fun and happy. Why would we stop that?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is your first book that you've written?
It is my first published book. It's very exciting, and I'm proud that this is my first book to get out in the world. Been writing for a very long time, but I've been writing lots of different styles, but I always came back to writing children's book and being very lyrical in the way that I write. It comes to me very organically, and I find that sometimes I'll just rattle off stories to my daughter without reading to her, and they become very lyrical, very organically, and she responds really well to them. So I started really focusing on my children's books, and I have quite a few in the works now, so it's exciting.
Well done. And I mean, you as you said, you've written before, but this was obviously a big step to take publishing. So this was something you felt strongly about. This theme, this topic was something important that you felt wanted to share to take that next step into publishing and getting it out there.
Absolutely. And it wasn't getting published, wasn't my driver. It was trying to get the message out into homes and across the world. And a lot of people have said to me, why didn't you self-publish? And but it wasn't about that. I could have done that, but it's about spreading this message in a really that old-fashioned way as well. It brings reading a book to your child brings people together, not an ebook where it's let's get your tablets out, let's sit on the bed and read a book together and talk about what the message is, and then it's going to encourage them to play. So this book is it means a lot to me, and getting published as a first-time author, I could have done it with any of my books, but this was a really powerful message that resonated with me as a mother, a stepmother, and as a partner. And
I think it's fantastic, and as your publisher, I think it's a fantastic theme as well that society needs to be aware of. We've had a lot of positive feedback on the book, so getting it out there in the market, I believe, is going to happen fairly naturally. I think people will respond to it, as you say. So tell us more about your writing style. So having this book, as you said, writing a children's book seems simple, it seems easy, but obviously there's a certain psychological element you have to be engaged in to write it so simply that children understand it, but it doesn't, it still has to have its message. So what's your style in creating your children's books? Do you really give them a lot of research or thought, or how do you draft your writing style?
How do I draft my writing style? It's a really interesting question, because I'll be honest with you, my writing style comes very naturally. I've forced a lot of styles on myself to try and, because I have interest in other styles, like editorial sort of pieces. I've tried that. I've tried novels, and I find that it's not a driver for me, but I think it's the end result of writing a children's book, aligning with my ability to write very lyrical stories and rhyme, and the words come to me very simply. And obviously I love children, and becoming a mother, so many seeds got planted in my mind, and I think just in the back of my brain, it was just going and going and going, and these books started sort of flowing out of me. But my writing style is, fortunately, very natural, comes very natural to me, and I sort of just gave into that ability to write, because I'd love to be able to write a big long novel. I just don't think I ever will, because I'll be honest with you, I love writing for children.
And it is a good skill, because it is that challenge of simplifying your styling of words you've been educated in as an adult and thoughts you've been educated in, and you have to put them in a context that is at that level of innocence, of first time reading, first time seeing things, first time understanding things, and you have to be conscious.
And simplifying very serious messages as well.
Right. Yeah.
That doesn't put too much pressure on them. Like you said earlier, it lets them sort of understand it in their own time. Yeah. And that's how I had a few different pieces of I'm a boy, oh yes I am. I'd written it quite a few times, and I think there's the adult in me wanted to really try and define it and refine it and expand it. And then I just went, hold on a minute, I'm just going to stop. I'm going to take it right back to the basics. I want to write for our real little ones, so they can just look at the pictures and hear the words and start the relations and explore themselves. And I want it to motivate them. So writing this book has taught me a lot about who I actually am as a writer. I found a lot of myself throughout writing this book. And I think that's why I love this book so much, is it's done so much for me and my family, and hopefully so many families out there across the world.
Yeah, and I think it will. I think you're right on that, because it is topical, and having a topic in a children's book is very strong, but simplified. So having done that, having created the story and then moving into the publishing process, of course, then we aligned you to your illustrator, who was Tess. Tell me now, because you've done so much on this work, so much on the thoughts and so much on the process of your own. Well, how did you find the collaboration process when you had somebody else's elements into the book, which was the illustrations, which you had input into? I know your collaboration, but how did you find sharing the art and style of now creating the actual book for you?
It was actually very scary, because you're essentially handing over what people will see that's in your mind. You're handing it over to someone else's skills and talent, and they're going to have their own reflection of the book. So it was very scary, and it created a lot of anxiety for me. And it was hard to sort of let go and hand it over to someone else. And when Tess first developed the images, at first I wasn't too sure, because they were great. She was so talented. I couldn't believe what she had done, like, with her hands. But then over time, I started to relate what I'd actually written to how simple the images were. And it works perfectly. It's exactly what the book needed. So I learned to let go. So it taught me a lot about being able to just embrace the whole process and understand that the process will happen really organically. I often sort of think about it, and this might sound a little strange, but through my pregnancy with my daughter Jagger, I kind of related that first time publishing process to the pregnancy. Like, when that book finally comes to light, it's like, wow, you waited so long for this. It really didn't look like what I thought it would look like, but oh my God, I love it so much, and it's exactly how it's supposed to be. Which is exactly how I felt when my daughter was born. I'm like, are you mine?
We hadn't seen her for 9 months, so that makes sense.
It was very
like, oh, is that what you look like?
It was quite there's a lot of reflections, but it was quite scary as a new author. And I think I kind of let Tess just do a thing, really. I kind of went, look, have a feel for it. And I know that, yeah, I had a lot of those anxieties, but it's turned out really well.
Good. It is hard. Sometimes, as you say, trusting you've carried that baby. Sometimes handing it out to someone else is hard to trust and to make sure that everything's happening for it. So in that regard, as you said earlier, you really want the message to be shared about the book. For you, what do you feel a literary success is? Like, when would you say to yourself you succeeded as being an author for you?
When it impacts our little ones. It's not so much about, I would never focus on the profit of sales. It's about the message and it being received well. I also find success in being an author in me developing from it. Being able to see the impact it's had and motivate me to continue to do what I do. I've already found success in my eyes so far. How do you define success when I think it's a snowball. I think it's something that you can't get greedy with, but something that you just got to fall in love with and keep redefining as you go down that path. Writing was a hobby for me, and then when I aligned my hobby with a really strong message that I felt it was my purpose to send out into the world, that's when I started to find a little bit more success. But when those books reach families and I hear stories of people that I don't even know are impacted by my book, that's going to be a pretty powerful feeling for me.
Absolutely. Reader feedback is going to be a very good scale to measure it by, of course. But of course, you've kept that humble, which it is. Success needs its humility and its humbleness. You need to be accepting of small milestones as well, which is great. You understand that. So you've got a very good integral part of being a writer, which is just taking it slowly. So tell me, for you personally, on the level of having now being a children's book author, what was your favorite children's book when you were younger? Like, do you remember what you were reading at that age? Or
yes, I'm trying to think of what I did have a favorite children's book. I loved all my Jemima Puddle Ducks and all that sort of thing, and Noddy. A lot of rhyming ones I loved, but there was a book that still, for some reason, sticks in my mind, and it was something about Oscar the Grouch. It was one of those books. Was it the Golden Circle?
Yes. Yeah.
And
the Sesame Street series.
Yes, they've got the gold edgings, and there's something about Oscar the Grouch, and I still remember being in love with that book. But I'll be honest with you, growing up as through my teenage years, I didn't read a lot. I wrote. I never read books, I wrote. And I know that I hear stories of really well-known authors. They read and read and read, and that's how they learn, and they learn different styles. I don't. I don't read a lot. I read a lot of children's books, and I read a lot of really inspirational sort of pieces and stuff like that. And I think it keeps me very what's the word? Like raw. Like I'm not. I'm still myself.
Yeah.
But yeah, growing up, I just wrote and I wrote and I wrote about everything. And yeah, I think I've just influenced myself, and I've tapped into everything that I've seen and I hear, and I write about it.
Yeah. So do you believe in writer's block? Have you ever experienced it, giving so much writing time, or?
Massively. Writer's block is really frustrating, especially when you want to develop something really cool. I'm working on one right now. I reckon I've been working on for about 1.5 years, and it's a children's book. Like, it's how many pages? There's not much. When you look at a children's book, it's like, oh, how hard could this be? I can write a whole book in the space of 10 minutes, but it'll take me 2 years to write the book. Yeah. Because I'll write it and go, okay, so this is the skeleton of it. Now there's going to be some amendments because there's still some lessons that I need to learn. There's still some things that I need to see and witness and feel, maybe through my kids or my stepkids, and which is going to impact where this story goes. But I will write the story from start to finish, when I get an idea, the seed gets planted, but I don't write that story until I know the whole story. And then it warms up over time. You know, it incubates. The skeleton's there, but then it incubates over time and the story gets warmer and warmer.
Yeah, like having a baby.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Have you got a lot of stories, I guess, in that way, of that process? Do you find you get so frustrated you do dismiss them? Have you just sort of got a pile of stories you just know they're never going to be done?
Yeah.
Like you're just like, that's just ideas, I just can't get them to
work. You walk away from them, but the seed is still there. It's still being planted. It's just not being watered. Yeah. Maybe it will be later. And I really trust the timing of things. If something comes to me like that and I write half a story, I don't give up on it. I just put it aside, and it might be a couple of years and I'll come back to it. You know, there's a couple of stories I've got there that I have started and I've tapped in, I've done research, and then I felt like I was forcing it by trying to do so much research. I said, no, this is not how I'm supposed to write. I've been put on this earth to write really freely and organically, and it's going to come to me. There's things I need to learn yet. Yeah. So yeah, it's can't
push it. I agree.
No, you can't. You can't. Writer's block sometimes can be a relief at times, like, oh, okay, I can relax about this now. It's still some exciting things I've got to learn as a writer.
So curiously, you wrote so much when you were young, you said. What made you not pursue more writing professionally into your career path? You did go off and do other elements, other things, and you know, explore other career potentials. Why not? What brought you back to thinking about writing again, or is it just
I often ask my parents, why didn't they push me down that path? I was a gymnast. I was heavily into my sport, and I trained every day, and I didn't see anything past my sport. So I wrote as a hobby. It was like a release for me. And then I was just so focused on my sport. I don't even think I really focused on school at the time, because it was just my sport. It was it was my identity. But my parents never really sort of sat me down and goes, you're a great writer. There's a life after your sport. Why don't we look at that sort of path? I wish they did, and I don't blame them for that. They're great parents, but nothing ever sort of made me think anything more of it. I love to write, and that was it. It wasn't until I'm a Boy I came along that made me realise this needs to get out into the world. And for quite a few years before this book got developed, I did feel like I had to take my writing further. But it's a very hard industry to sort of break into when you're not very well known or you don't have a lot of money. That's what I found. But this message is important, and you guys saw it and wanted to help me get it out there. I think that's where the blessing is.
We were just the vehicle. You've done all the work. That's the thing, and it's inspiring. And that's the thing, that you've taken that challenge and that step head on, and you've embraced it, as you said earlier. Let go to share it and to embellish it or help it grow its next step, which is being published. And I'm sure out there, all the people watching are going to buy it and enjoy this book because it's fabulous. So if I can ask you a personal question, what or who inspires you to be your best self?
Before my daughter come along, it was me. As odd as that sort of sounds, because I've struggled over my years loving myself, and I know a lot of women may have, and I wanted to keep finding different lessons and journeys and embrace different things throughout my life to learn to love myself. When my daughter come along, then she inspires me. She's a pretty incredible kid, and obviously I want to develop and be a great mom, and she motivates me to continue to work on myself. And being a children's author is something that I know she'll be very proud of me for, and it's going to impact her and her friends and who she hangs out with and that sort of stuff. So yeah, I've been I wanted to love myself for so long, for so many years, and I think I never wanted to let myself go. So yeah, it was constantly trying to find who I am. That kind of motivated myself. Yeah.
Good. Sometimes that's all we have is ourselves. No, I totally understand.
100%. Yeah.
So what's your, like, you've got the desire, the talent. So what's the biggest challenge for you when writing your books or your stories? Especially now that you're stepping into the publishing arena, I'll give you a tip. I think one of the things coming for you in the future is going to be the expectation of a fan base. So once you develop this fan base, which I know you're going to achieve, they're going to expect things from you as your writer. So that's going to be a big challenge because you have to keep appeasing them. You want to keep writing well. But during this first stage, just up to now, what have you found being a challenge to you?
Wanting to write when I can't.
Mm-hmm.
Wanting to write the kinds of books that I want to write, and the messages not being there, the words not being there. The challenges of being a mum, working full time, getting interrupted all the time. Mm-hmm. But it's in those moments that I also learn a lot of things and embrace them. And again, they're those seeds being planted. I don't forget them. I don't forget those challenges. I take those challenges as growth, platforms and just continue to move forward. But absolutely is been wanting to write and not being able to. Because I don't want to just write stories for no reason. Mm-hmm. I'd love to be able to write even children's books with just made up stories, but I always want to have that deeper message. That's who I am. I've always seen things a little bit differently ever since I was little. If I looked at a cat, I didn't just see a cat. I actually saw how the cat moved. Mm-hmm. I still remember images from when I was quite young and how things made me feel. And I think that's something that I need to really utilize as an adult that can impact our young people.
Absolutely. And as I say, the idea of building that fan base is to hopefully alleviate some of those challenges you have now, like the job. So maybe that it can give you more time for writing, because this will become something that I think you can evolve into. You've got the talent. I can assure you of that. So when you were younger as a child yourself, what did you want to really do when you were growing up? Like, what was your childhood drive, your ideal world as an adult?
Like every little girl, I wanted to be a vet. I really did want
a vet.
I really did want to grow up and be a vet. I was a dreamer. I really was a dreamer.
Yep. I thought you were going to say an Olympian or something with all this sport, but then a vet is certainly.
That's where I was getting to. I wanted to get on an Australian team. I wanted to be an Australian champion, and I achieved these things. And I realized when I achieved these things that, if I actually really think about something, I can do it. There's absolutely no limit. Yep. And I knew pursuing when the sort of idea planted of actually publishing, and I have friends that have self-published, and I'm like, no, I'm not going to self-publish. That's not what I want to achieve. I want to achieve being published. Yeah. Someone taking control of my book, going, I'm going to sell this for you. Mm-hmm. I'm going to create this for you. Do you know what I mean? So
yes, I do.
And I knew eventually.
In fact, I know a very good publisher.
Yes. Yeah, I knew it was going to eventually, come to light. But I was a dreamer. I knew, but there wasn't anything I couldn't achieve, which was quite scary to sort of comprehend at a young age.
When did you realise that? How old were you when you realised that you sort of had that power in your mind to achieve a goal?
When I reckon it really sort of hit me when I turned 18. Mm-hmm. Because when I was 6 or 7, I went to the Australian Institute of Sport for gymnastics. My dreams were kind of killed when I went there, because they told me that the bone structure throughout my legs weren't up to standard for the Olympic team. So I was in clinics towards the 2004 Olympics. And they said to me, you can either stay here and train with us through our stream in Canberra, or you can go home and continue to compete in your national stream. And I said, I'll go home. That's fine. I'm not going to uproot my whole family when maybe I need to redirect it. But it was really hard to sort of accept as a little girl. And I never gave up on the idea of wanting to be an Australian champion, but I never really defined it. I never said I wanted to be an Australian champion as a gymnast. I picked up the sport of wakeboarding kind of randomly throughout my early teens, and I ended up becoming an Australian champion when I was 18 years old for the women's. It was quite a shock for me, but I remember reflecting on it after winning, going, wow, like I manifested this.
Yeah.
I didn't define it, but I've manifested this whole experience.
Yeah.
So it really clicked that I can actually achieve whatever I wanted. And that's when I was sort of leaving school, and I thought, I'm a gymnast. I want to join the circus. When I was a little girl, that was one of my other dreams. I want to join the circus. So I left and I joined the circus. I moved to Melbourne and I joined the circus, and I was in the circus for years. I explored that whole industry and I loved it. It was the best. And then injuries happen and I'm like, okay, this is fine. This is okay. I've got to be somewhere else now. And it moved me into a different career. But the one thing that stayed with me from the very start to now was writing.
Yeah.
It was one thing that never left me. So I resort back to it quite a bit. So being published is a very special thing for me, because it's something that it was given to me when I was born, I think.
But also, like you said earlier, you've written a lot, but I think now you understand and you're ready to be published and take the bigger steps. And that's what I think in part of that growth process you've experienced in life, as you've become to realize that now you're ready. And I think that will transcend you into another phase of your life. So one question too, just out of curiosity, with all this writing and all this efforts and everything you put into the writing and passion, tell us, what's your interesting writing quirk? Like, some writers, like to write naked. Some writers like to write some writers in the bath, some like in cafes, some write in a certain shirt, some have to wear a certain hat when they're writing. What for you is your writing quirk?
My writing quirk, I don't really call it a quirk, but I write my books without writing it down in one go.
Yeah.
So I'm a boyo, yes I am. I was sitting there and the seed was obviously planted, like I told you, and it had been sitting there for quite a while. And then one day I just started telling the story to my daughter. And the next book that you guys are working on for me at the moment, another story that I just, out of the blue, came to me. And I'm like, okay, now I've got to go write that down. And I wrote down the whole story.
Yep.
They come to me in a big lot, but when things come to me in the moment and I'm on my own, I will sit there and I'll write the whole thing out. There's no stopping me. There's nothing, you can't distract me. I'll write 100 miles an hour. I look like an insane person. It's like, I've got to keep writing, like I can't stop. It's like someone is just throwing the words at me from somewhere else, like a different dimension. They're just, all right, here it is. Get it on paper.
quick.
Take it. Yeah, it's really quite crazy, and it's really quite a magical experience to feel, especially when I'm with my rhyming, because a lot of my things that come to me are very lyrical and very rhyming. My daughter starts dancing. She loves it. And she can feel the beat of the story. Yeah. And that's how I know I'm onto something.
No, good. Well done. Well, look, Kelly, it's wonderful talking to you, but I'm going to wrap it up there for you. For everybody watching now, Kelly's book is out everywhere books are sold. So it's I'm a Boy, Oh Yes I Am, by K A Farrell, illustrations by Tess Dowling. And it's a wonderful book. It's available February 2021. Thank you, Kelly, so much for your wonderful, inspiring and enthusiastic chat today. I'm so honoured to be a part of your journey. Thank you. And we look forward to your next book coming out again for, what is it? Perfectly Me. Is that correct? Is it? That's the next phase. Perfectly Me is the next one. Absolutely. So that's coming soon too, people. Keep watching, keep learning from Kelly. Thank you, Kelly, and to all the readers of the book and people I'm sure will get in touch with you through Instagram, I believe. Is that the best place for them to follow you on?
Yeah, absolutely.
So look for K A Farrell, author, and Instagram. thank you again. Have a wonderful day and take care, everybody.
Thank you, Bradley. Thank you, everyone.
Now.